Hi all, I'm back for another video. In today's video I have this zero-turn mower here. This is my father's mower, and this mower has recently got itself a little problem. It's been surging at idle, mid-speed, and even at full speed. It's starting to surge. So I'm going to fix this today and see what the result is. If you have the same problem with your mower, follow along and I'll show you how to fix it. Now I'm doing this repair on a Kohler 7000 series. It's a KT740, that shouldn't matter. As long as it's a 7000 series with a V-twin engine on it, it should really be the same. Now mine's a 25 horsepower. Again, that shouldn't really matter. It's all the same. So what I want to do is I want to get access to the carburetor. And the carburetor is about somewhere in this region down here. So in order to get to that, I need to start removing shrouds and pieces until I get to the carburetor. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to remove this plate right here in order to get to the engine. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so in order to remove this shroud here, there is a bolt there, and two on the other side that do the same thing. Now this one and the one on the other side, there's a 7/16 nut that's under there. So you're going to have to go ahead and hold a wrench under there and while you're taking that bolt off. Okay, and with those 4 bolts out, this piece should just come right off. Now just go ahead and set that aside. So before I move any further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the mower up and show you exactly what it's doing. So you notice how it was kind of surging there? That's what we're fixing. So after you go ahead and take that shroud off, the carburetor is way down there. There's 2 tabs on each side here, right here and right here. You're going to want to go ahead and pop those 2 out. And after you do that, you can lift this cover up and go set that aside. Now this is your air filter. You're going to want to make sure that when you take this out, no dirt goes in the hole that it's going in. So what you're typically going to want to do is take a towel or something and stick it down in that hole, just so nothing gets in its way. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this air filter out. I'm going to set that aside. And just for now, I'm going to go ahead and stick a towel right in here. If something goes in there, it's not the end of the world. What's going to happen is if you get enough stuff in there, and the engine over time will lose compression. So it's not the best to get stuff in there, but if you can't help it, then it's not the end of the world. It's a lawnmower, not a rocket. So from here, this piece needs to come off. But then after that, this piece needs to come off. But in order to get this piece off, this piece needs to come off. So I'm going to have to take a bunch of bolts out just to slide this piece out. So right now I'm going to work on getting the bolts out of this top cover in order to get the rest of it off. There's a bolt here, a bolt here, a bolt here, and a bolt here. That should be it. Okay, so I took those 4 bolts out. Now there's 3 bolts here that I'm going to want to take out. So after I take those 3 bolts out, there's a bolt here and a bolt down here on the fuel pump. They're quite big, and that's what mounts the fuel pump to the shroud. I'm going to have to pop that off. Now that's not going to separate your fuel pump or anything. All it's going to do is dismount it. So take those 2 out. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop this cowling off. So when you take that cowling off, sometimes if your mower's sitting way back in the woods like this one was, Well, almost. It was in a shed next to the woods. That's a mouse nest right there. We've unclogged mouse nests out of this thing about 3 times before. So just note, get any sort of dirt away from here. This mechanism is the choke. That's not going to work right if there's mouse nests there. Make sure it's out of here, because then your engine may overheat. Make sure the coil wires are not chewed through, because we replaced the wire harness before too. So make sure all that's clear and out of the way. Okay, so that mouse nest is gone now. Just make sure that all of the debris is away from the choke and it's not inside next to the heads, because then your engine will overheat. Other than that, I don't care. Okay, so from here I came to the back of the mower where this metal plate is again, and what I need to do now is I need to pop this bolt out right here on the engine. That's the wrong size. And then from here, what I'm going to want to do is, this is a one-way clip. You're going to want to go ahead and clip that in and push it out like that. And from here, there's a bolt here you're going to want to take out and a bolt here. You want to go ahead and take those 2 out. Okay, so in my case, when I took them out, the nuts didn't come off, but the studs came off instead. That's okay. Just pull the studs out, hold the carburetor on the bottom, slide this metal piece away, and just rest this somewhere for now. There's a vent here. This is your crankcase vent. Go ahead and pull this out. And then you have another little vent here. This is your gas tank vent. Go ahead and pull this out. And then take this cover and just go ahead and slide that away. And because the studs came out instead of the nuts, your carburetor is already loose on there. So what I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to have to start disconnecting things from that. Okay, so from here, if your studs didn't come off, just take the nuts off and leave the carburetor on there for now. If your studs came off, just hold the carburetor on there for now. Go ahead and unplug this bottom right here. This is the fuel solenoid. You're going to want to go ahead and unplug that. There you go. And then from here, you're going to want to go ahead and take this top linkage off right here. In order to take this linkage off, just twist it to the left. I'm sorry, to the right. And lift up. Lift up, then twist to the right, and the linkage will just pop out. Go ahead and set that aside. And from here, you're going to want to go ahead and take your fuel line off. Okay, so I just unplugged the smart choke here real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and set that aside because that's kind of in my way. And another thing I did is I re-screwed the studs back into the carburetor, just so the carburetor doesn't go flapping on me. Now I'm going to take out that fuel line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a pair of vice grips and just clamp off the fuel line so that no fuel escapes while I'm trying to take the fuel line out. And then from here I'm going to take a pair of slip joint pliers. I'm going to go ahead and take that clamp off. Now there are special pliers you can use for that, but you know, I don't have them. And then from here, sometimes you can use those slip joint pliers if you need it, but I'm just going to attempt to pull the fuel line off of the carburetor and hope it comes off. Sometimes they can be stiff. Okay, so I just got the fuel line off of the carburetor. Now I'm just going to go ahead and set this. I'm going to go ahead and take the vice grips off, and I'm going to set the fuel line above the fuel pump somewhere so that it doesn't leak out. So I just set the fuel line against the intake manifold just like that, so that the fuel stays in there and nothing falls out. That'll be fine. And now I need to take the linkage out. So I'm going to undo those studs again. Take the carburetor somewhat off, and then this linkage right here needs to come out. So in order to take this linkage out, you want to hold the linkage here, you want to pull the linkage out and twist the carburetor up. But before you take the linkage out, the spring needs to come out. In order to take the spring out, just take the spring. Sometimes you might need a pair of needle nose pliers and just yank it out. I think I'm going to need a pair of needle nose pliers. Okay, so I just popped that spring out of there just with my needle nose pliers. Now I'm going to pull the linkage out and twist the carburetor. And the linkage should come out. Okay, now your carburetor is fully off of your machine. So what you're going to want to do now is, typically your carburetor is full unless you ran your machine out dry. What you're going to want to do is take your carburetor and just flip it upside down or to the side, and all your fuel will drain out of your bowl. Just like that. And then we take it to the bench. Okay, so from here what I'm going to do is I need to pop the bowl off. And in order to do that, you have to take the fuel solenoid off. In order to do that, you need to either get some sort of skinny wrench or grind a regular wrench down. So what I did is I took a regular 1/2-inch wrench and I took one side of it and I just ground it down with a grinding disc on an angle grinder, and it's a little bit narrower than a normal wrench now. So that should fit right in between here, like that. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that off now. There you go. Set that aside. And your bowl should pop off. There you go. And there's the inside of your carburetor. Go ahead and slide your pin out. Take your floating needle out. And you could also take that jet out in the center there. So what I'm going to do before I start diagnosing anything is I'm going to pop this in the ultrasonic and just get some of the dirt off of it. So I'm going to pop the carburetor in and let it go for about 30 minutes. I had it in the ultrasonic for about 10 minutes, but I forgot to take the jet and the pilot out, and the emulsion tube. I'm sorry, so I'm going to have to go ahead and do that. I'm going to find a screwdriver that's skinny enough to fit in here, but wide enough to fit on the jet. And I'm going to take that jet out. Sometimes that jet can be stiff, so try not to strip it. But this one came out fine. Seems to be clear. Here comes the emulsion tube. This is probably what's causing me issues. This is probably what's clogged up here. There's definitely some dirt in this, so I'm gonna have to, I'll probably stick this in the ultrasonic and clean this out, because there's already some pieces in there. So I'm going to go through, and then I'm going to go through with a micro drill bit. I'm not going to drill it out, but I'm just going to make sure that they're all clear. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in the ultrasonic now. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take the bowl, and I'm going to pop out the bowl gasket. That is nasty. And I'm going to put the bowl in the ultrasonic just to clean out what's in the inside, the bowl gasket residue, and what's on the outside. Don't put the float in, because that's plastic. There's no reason to put that in. Just clean that with soap and water. Okay, so it just finished in the ultrasonic about 30 seconds ago, so I'm going to go ahead and take it out now. I'm going to dry it off and put it on the bench. Okay, so what I did is I found the appropriate size micro drill bit that comfortably fits through each of these holes. And I'm not going to drill, I'm just going to put them through here and make sure that it fits. You know what? As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to use the drill. I'm just going to take the drill bit and I'm going to go through these holes and make sure that they're all clear. Okay, so this is all clear now. I'm just going to go ahead and spray this out with carb spray. And then I'm going to go ahead and just lightly spray it out. Okay, so the pilot jet is way down in there. You're going to want to make sure that's clear. You're going to have to get that with a wire, spray it with carb spray, air compressor, whatever method works for you, but you have to make sure that the one on the left there is clear. Okay, so I found a size micro drill bit that will fit in there. The biggest size is a number 68 at 31 thousandths of an inch. It slides in there, but it's pretty stiff. So what I'm just trying to do is I'm trying to work it back and forth right now to make sure that it slides through there the best it can. Because if this is blocked up, that's going to wait. This is the reason your engine surges is if your pilot jet's blocked up. Okay, so this one here, as you can see, it does not fit, but it's very close. So what I'm going to do is, if I start it up and it still doesn't run right, I'm going to come back and I'm going to take that drill bit that barely does not fit and drill it out one size. That way I can open that up a little bit. But this one seems to be sliding through there okay now. So I think I'm just going to put it back together with this one because it seems like that's the one that is meant for it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some carb spray down that hole. Too much. And then I'm going to take my air compressor and spray it out. Here, you should feel it coming out of this hole up top right there. That little tiny hole. It should come out of. If it doesn't, you got issues. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and spray back in that hole right there. Okay, and then I'll spray out the, you know what? Take some carb spray, put it down here, and then I'll spray this out here. I'll put some down here, and I'll spray out that centerpiece there. And then take your jet here. You know what, I'm going to do the same micro drill bit thing with this jet right here. My guess is it's going to be the same size. I'm going to go through that jet and just make sure it's clear. That's too small. Biggest size I got. Too small. So that's quite a big jet. That's why this thing guzzles fuel, because the jet's way too big. So I'm going to take my carburetor cleaning wires here, and I'm just going to clean it out like that. This one's not going to really give you an issue because it's way too big. As you can see, even this big wire will fit through there. That's kind of ridiculous. Okay, and from here, I'm going to put it back together. But what I'm going to do is, instead of just putting it back together, I'm going to rebuild the carburetor just because that bowl gasket was a little crunchy. If you want to rebuild your carburetor, here's your part number for the rebuild kit right there. Okay, now I'm going to start rebuilding the carburetor. So I'm going to go ahead and slide the emulsion tube down like that. And I'm going to have to push it down in there somehow. And take my screwdriver and just pop it down in there. As you can see, it came back out in the throttle body there. You see the emulsion tubes in there now. And then I'm going to take my jet here, my main jet. I'm going to stick it back in there. Or screw it back in there, should I say. Now this one you want tight enough so it doesn't come loose, but loose enough so you can get it off next time. Alright, that's pretty good. And from here, I'm going to take my new needle, the old float. You know what, I should probably just spray this float down real quick. Just wipe it off. Now I'm going to take my float, I'm going to flip it. This is right side up, okay? That's upside down. So this way, flip your float kind of like this, and you want your needle just to slide into the float, right like that. If you could pull on the needle, don't pull hard, just a little bit. If you pull on it, it comes out, you did it wrong. So just like that, it just has to rest in there, no fasteners, and then take your needle and put it in the seat hole, the metal seat rubber needle, and line it up with the pin hole and put your pin in like that, and make sure the pin's centered and make sure your float's level. Well, this float will push down a little bit because there's a spring inside the needle. Don't worry about that, that's not a big issue. I don't know if I like that design. That's a very bad design because that new needle, it promotes flooding in your engine. Say there's a little bit of dirt, this rises, comes up, your needle doesn't shut, your engine floods. Whereas that one, it doesn't have the spring in it, so this wouldn't go down. So I think I like the old design better, but if need be, we'll put the old one back in. The fuel solenoid should not make that issue a thing, though. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the bowl gasket back on, like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the bowl back on. You know what I have to do before I put the bowl back on? I gotta scrape this old gasket off. Okay, I got the majority of that gasket off. There's a little bit of material on there, but I'm not complaining. Put the bowl back on, doesn't matter the direction. And then take your new gasket and put it on the fuel solenoid. Make sure your fuel solenoid freely goes up and down. If not, then you gotta get a new one. Whoop, don't do that. And take your fuel solenoid, stick it in center, and thread it on. Make sure not to cross thread it. It should be pretty hard to cross thread because the threads are coarse. But make sure not to cross thread it. Now the solenoid won't hand tighten because the solenoid will just spin. So you have to take your wrench and tighten it with that. So I'm going to slide my wrench in. And I'm going to tighten her down. Don't go too tight, but don't go too loose. Alright? And then you want to orient this gray plug, this black plug here, and turn it towards the front of the carburetor, where the choke assembly is. Like that. And you're good to go. Your carburetor's all put back together. Now you can go put it back on the engine. Okay, now we're back at the engine. So I'm going to replace this gasket first, which is right here. It came in my kit. So I'm just going to force the old one off. And I'm probably, to be honest with you, I'm going to force the new one on too. Just yank that off, that gasket. And then the new one, we got to line it up and see which way it goes. So that's the wrong way because it's not being held on by these two. If you want to put it on like that so it doesn't catch on those, feel free. But I gotta put it in these holes here. Like that. Oh, wrong way. I gotta flip it around. Make sure everything lines up. Like that. Make sure everything lines up. So now that that's on there, I can go grab the carburetor. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to try to take a pair of pliers and nip on the studs just to try to get the nuts off. Because I want the studs on, but I don't want the nuts on. Okay, so what I did is I double nutted the studs so that the studs won't come off again, but the nuts will. So I'm going to go ahead and button everything back up again. Okay, so I'm going to put the linkage on now. Where the white button is, I'm going to slide the carburetor in and twist. Now that linkage is on. I should be able to bring it over here in order to just put the carburetor back on the studs. Like that. And then I'm going to put the spring on. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this linkage back on. Okay, so to put the linkage back in, the linkage has to be positioned like this. Make sure to memorize that. And then I got to put this top bit in here. And the bottom section has to go in this oval-like section. And then all you have to do is twist. And the linkage is in. So what this does is when your machine starts, it opens this. The fan on the flywheel opens this, and then what this does is it opens the choke about 40%, but then when you shut it, it closes all the way. We were having a problem for a while where the engine wouldn't start because this was always like that. Always, it wouldn't shut. So what the issue was is this linkage was put on wrong by somebody. My guess is that when I took this apart the first time, I didn't put it on right, but make sure to put the linkage on right, because if you don't, your engine may not start. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the fuel line back on. I'm just going to grab it and just stick it back on. Then I'm going to take my pliers and put the clamp back on. Take your little clip down here, your plug in your electric wire for the fuel solenoid. Go ahead and plug that in. It should only go in one way. It might go in two ways. Just like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this piece back on. I did take the paper towel out just because I needed it out. I went ahead and cleaned the base of here just because I need that clean in order to put it back on and put the gasket back on correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and put the gasket on now just to save myself some time. And then I'm going to go ahead and install this cover. The bolt holes should line up right here. So these two bolt holes should line up with these two studs. Okay, this is a pretty bad shot here, but you're going to want to see this. So I'm going to go ahead and I have to put my gas tank vent back in and my crankcase vent back in these two nozzles in my cover here. Now I have to reinstall this cover right here. Now while you're doing this, make sure that this fork right here on the smart choke ends up on the fork on the choke on the carburetor. There's a fork on the carburetor. Match it up with here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, and then I just clipped my clip back in here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my two bolts that go here and install those. Again, tight enough so that carburetor gets held on, but loose enough so you don't break anything. Now the bolt that goes in here you're going to have to put in next. Now it's possible you may have to loosen those two nuts that you just put in order to get that one in. I'm going to loosen those nuts because the bolt hole is a little bit off. Leave that one loose for now, and then go ahead and tighten these two bolts back down. And after you tighten those two bolts back down, then you can go ahead and tighten this bolt on the bottom. And then from here, you're going to have your smart choke wires that you're going to want to have to go ahead and put back in. So go ahead and plug those back in. Should only go in one way, so that shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put the air filter back on the engine. I'm just going to place it on there for now. And now I'm at the point where I can test it to see if my problem is solved and see if I fixed it really. So I'm going to go ahead and see if it starts and see if the surging's gone. It's going to do that because fuel's got to get into the carb again. Well, I think I fixed the problem. The surging's gone, and everything seems to be working as it should. Okay, I just wanted to mention the reason that it was puffing out black smoke originally is because it sounded like it was running rich, right? Well, the thing was the cover wasn't on, so there was no air to push this choke back. So I had to come in and manually push the choke back. And once I did, it ran fine. So I'm going to go ahead and put the blower cover on now, and then I'm going to go ahead and strap everything back together. Okay, so I just got this button back on, and now I'm realizing how much of a great fix this was. So I'm gonna start it up now for a few seconds, and then I'm gonna play a clip of me starting it up before I fixed it, and you're gonna have to see how much of a difference it made. It's ridiculous how great this runs now. Watch this. No surging, it's running clean, crisp and smooth. No hunting, no grunting, no surging, no coughing. It's running like a brand new engine, if you can believe that. Throttle, this engine used to cough like crazy. Now it's not even coughing or surging or anything. It's great. And it has no issue starting. It starts up on a dime. So, I hope you guys have a success story fixing your lawnmower. Comment down below if you were able to fix your lawnmower using this method. Thank you all for watching this video as I took apart the engine and fixed it, and it runs like new again. And before it didn't run good, now it runs great. Stay tuned for next week. I'll post another video then. And if you haven't already, go watch my Trash to Cash video series where I fully restore an Echo trimmer from a piece of dirt and garbage to a chunk of cash. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. I believe it goes like this. Put it in like this. And then put it in and twist. There we go. That's how it goes.